Ask Reddit. People who had COVID-19 or know someone who did. How bad was it? My uncle died from it. He died at his house while in self-quarantine. Didn't know he died until after he didn't call or answer his phone after 2 days. Just heard this morning that a friend of mine died last night. Her partner called 911 when she took a turn for the worse, and in the time it took the EMTs to get there she'd already passed. It was that quick. She'd been tested, knew she was positive. She was told to stay at home unless her symptoms got worse. She felt sick, but not rushed to the hospital sick. Until last night, I'm trying to comfort myself knowing she'd rather die in her own bed than in a hospital surrounded by strangers. I lost my fiance to it, and I don't know which option would have been worse. In the end, I suppose it doesn't matter. I'm so sorry. My condolences to him. COVID doesn't discriminate at all. I had it. I was basically bedridden for 2 weeks, barely doing anything except sleeping. Even then, I kept waking up at night a sweaty mess. I spread it to all my family members, but they showed extremely minor symptoms. Pretty weird stuff. To answer questions, when I had COVID-19, I developed hives. The onset of COVID-19 was extremely sudden, developing hives and a fever of 102 within an hour. I was also very confused and tired all the time. I didn't go outside much prior to getting COVID-19. I did make a full recovery within 2 weeks. I did not require hospital care. My sister, who was 47 with no underlying health issues, passed away from COVID-19. It took 10 days. She was in the hospital for the last 3. The scary part is she was making a recovery. Her lungs at day 7 were operating at 83%, and after 2 days in the hospital she had got them to 95%. In 29 hours it was a complete 180. I was able to text with her. She kept saying she was having a really tough time but didn't go into much detail. My brother-in-law and 2 nephews also had it. He mistakenly thought his COVID was just from a good gym workout, as his body was just really sore. My nephew, age 13, puked one night and had a fever for a few hours. The youngest, age 7, never had any symptoms and felt fine, all tested positive. I have known several that have contracted it, but 2 co-workers died from it on the same day last week, so pretty bad. My friend is in Italy. He got it and was sick bedridden for a week while his girlfriend had just some aches. Both his parents, his grandparents and his uncle died, all within a week. 30-year-old friend had it. He was so sick that his roommates were almost afraid to check on him in his room because they thought they'd find him dead. Getting out of bed to go to the bathroom took all of his strength. He's fine now, but it took a few weeks for his lungs to feel even remotely normal. My mother-in-law had something like this in January, before it was a thing, but we swear she had it. She would call us for help, and me or my wife would go over. We live 5 minutes away, and help her get something. She said she was out of breath walking to her bathroom, and then out of breath walking back after using it. It was wild. We all want to get antibody tests as soon as they're available. I've had 4 people in my life pass from it so far. Former co-worker and friend was one of the first people in the US to die from it. He was 34 years old and only had childhood asthma. A great friend and collaborator I had just stayed with a month before. He was 39 years old and no pre-existing conditions. My best friend's mother, who was like a second mother to me, she was 63 years old with no pre-existing conditions. My grandmother, who was in a nursing home, she was 90 and was relatively healthy for her age. All passed within 2 weeks of showing symptoms, with the exception of my grandma. They all were home for the first week, then were admitted to the hospital as their conditions worsened. Edit. Thank you for the outpouring of love and support. In a time where the normalcy of grieving and saying a final goodbye has been flipped on its head, your words mean a lot. If you have a specific question, feel free to DM or post and I will answer. My grandmother got it, in her late 80s and in a nursing home. She probably weighs 70 pounds and can barely sit up on the best of days. She had a fever for a week and a mild cough, then recovered. We're shocked. She's so weak that when the home told us she had it, we all thought she had no chance of beating it. Weird how it can kill strong, healthy people, but somehow spare her. 3 friends, 2 of which had families. One was living alone, so they all decided to live with each at the alone guy's house so their families didn't have to suffer the illness, and if one of them got badly sick the less sick guys could take care of him. They got a bad fever and a dry cough, and one of them lost his sense of taste for a little while afterwards, but they came out of it fine otherwise. Edit. Have families, not had. My mum went from minor tickling throat to being taken away in an ambulance by people in hazmat 3 days later, unable to breathe. 2 weeks later she died. No major health issues. She was sedated as soon as she went into hospital and on a ventilator for the duration. Eventually her organs started failing and there was nothing else they could do other than turn the ventilator off and let her go. Edit. Thank you for all the awards and messages etc. I wasn't expecting it. I know in most cases something like this is difficult to talk about, but because of the current global situation it all seems unreal. I don't mind talking about this and answering questions. Obviously it is such a weird virus, so my mum's experience may be different to others. It kind of feels like she is lost at sea. She went away and we couldn't see her. Now we are just waiting for the knock on the door with her ashes and someone saying I'm sorry for your loss. I'm currently recovering. I'm a 30-year-old male with no health issues, so maybe that's the reason, but for me it was like a mild cold. Felt crummy from Tuesday night to Thursday. Started feeling better Friday. Now I just have a bit of a cough and weird headaches. The testing process was a pain though. First one was inconclusive, so I had to get a doctor's note and go get another test. Be careful. That was me at the start of my symptoms before it came back and knocked me on my ass completely for 2 months. The stories of the early false recovery are real, so take it super easy and don't overexert yourself for a week. Currently in the hospital with is in my early 20s. I rode it out for a week until I could breathe. Sickest I've ever been and never had to hospitalized before now. Going home tomorrow though, so that's good. I'm recovering now. My mom had COVID. Started as a fever then quickly worsened. Within days she was in the hospital on oxygen. Seriously thought she was going to die. My dad has COVID. He has 0 symptoms and probably had it for days before the results. My dad is diabetic with kidney failure and multiple other health issues. Why my mother, who's mostly healthy, reacted so badly compared to my dad is uttering bewildering. Edit. For the love of God, if you have symptoms of COVID-19, please stay home. Don't ignore the signs. If you don't have symptoms, wear a mask and gloves whenever you leave your home. Please be careful and safe. Had a patient die on Saturday from COVID-19/respiratory failure. This entire month had 6 patients die. Literally Saturday I just sat in my car and cried. It's difficult seeing people lose moms, dads, brothers. I had it 29 years old. Fever, chills, and body aches for 3 days. Used Tylenol and fluids. Fiancé tested positive as well. Completely asymptomatic. I do have family friends who weren't so fortunate though, and required time in the hospital.